You're listening to Online Pet Health Podcasts with Dr. Megan Kelly. Continuing education for veterinarian rehabilitation therapists. Learn more at onlinepethealth.com.
Hey Vet Rehabbers, it's another one of my Behind the Vet Rehab Practice podcast. Today it's Carla Rodrigues from Positive Healing Vet in Florida, USA who chats to me. Carla amazingly runs her own practice with absolutely no help, not even someone to do the admin. This seems to work really well for her, and she shares how over the last few years she has worked out a way that she can get everything done. She admits to being a very good multitasker and not really good at blocking time, but she seems to have a system that works for her. Before we head over to my interview, I just wanted to remind you all of the amazing vet rehabber communities we have on Facebook. They are the Small Animal Vet Rehabbers, Business Vet Rehabbers, Hydro Vet Rehabbers, and our Equine Vet Rehabbers. Now, this is where the vet rehabbers from all over the world meet up every day. They share their cases, they ask for advice. It doesn't matter if you have a practice or it's just you on your own, you don't need to feel alone. We are all here online for you. So come and join one of the fastest growing vet rehab communities and learn from like-minded vet rehabbers, all wanting to expand their knowledge, learn, and grow into the best therapists that they can be. I'd love to connect with all of you guys on Instagram, so please take a screenshot of this podcast, tag me at Onlinepethealth, and let's get connected. It's great hearing from you and knowing that you're all joining me every week, listening to the Veterinary Rehabilitation Podcast. I want to say a quick shout out to Crystal Kelly. Thank you for posting and recommending the podcast on Facebook. Crystal, please get hold of me on meg@onlinepethealth.com. I'd like to give to you a Veterinary Rehabilitation Limited Edition mug. So over to my interview with Carla. Hey, Carla, thank you so much for joining me.
Good morning. Thank you.
Carla, why don't you tell the listeners how you got into the field of vet rehab?
Well, I was first exposed to it during my clinical year in veterinary school. I went to University of Minnesota for my clinical year. I went to Ross University for my veterinary schooling. And it was my first rotation when I was there. And I remember just falling in love with it. In fact, I took it twice that year. And I never forgot it, just the impact on what I saw, what it made on the patients. And I just loved everything about it, and I never forgot. And once I went into practice, I always kept it in mind. And I got certified about two years into practice. And I started looking into it, and I just had it under my belt and worked my way to where I am now.
And so what are the other studies that you've done? You've obviously done your rehabilitation. Are there any sort of alternative therapies that you do?
Yes, I also do acupuncture, and I'm currently in chiropractic or medical manipulation course right now that finishes in June.
Okay. And in your practice now, is it you and some other vets or vet rehabbers, or you're on your own?
I'm on my own for now. I opened about a year and a half ago, so it's just been me since I opened.
Okay. And how's it been going?
It's been great. It really has. I absolutely love it. The clients are amazing. As we know, clients are very different in the vet rehab world, or at least from what I see. They're very committed to their pets, and it's just a different bond. And one of the biggest reasons why I went into veterinary medicine is because I love bonding with animals, but I also love bonding with people. And that was the best mix for me. And as I did more and more vet rehab, I realized much more that I just love that little section of vet rehab and it's rewarding how much we can do for them. I mean, how happy not only the clients, but the pets are. I do a lot of senior and geriatric work. So it's very nice to just prolong their quality of life and be able to give that to people.
So tell us about that transition when you opened up your practice, the thought process going through it. Were there any sort of worries about it? Did you start mobile and then open up a practice, or did you just go straight into having a practice?
I went straight into having a practice. Of course, there's always some fears. It was a big leap of faith, but I was very ready. There was a lot of thought process that went into it. A lot of doubt, a lot of fear, just like any, we're only human. However, I really tried to set that aside. And that's where confidence comes in, and truly a leap of faith. I just had to trust that it was all going to work out, and I went for it. And it was challenging, but it was actually better than I thought. And it was because I was so focused and determined that I didn't let anything else in my way.
And is there anything that you did in the setup that you would change now?
No, honestly, I really feel like considering, and I set my practice up within 2 months. I did it very quickly. I left my job and I had my practice up and running in 2 months. So I stayed very simple. That was my biggest thing. I didn't want anything especially starting off a business financially. I didn't want anything too complicated. And I'm also very simple, pragmatic as a clinician anyway. But I started very simple, and I figured as I grow, I can always go ahead and continue to add things. And it's been working very well. The focus is success rate in the cases, and I've done very well with cases. I see primarily orthopedic neurologic cases and a lot of senior arthritic geriatrics. So, and they've all, under my hands, have done very well. It's very rare that a case does not respond to treatment, although it does happen. We always have our zebras, or however, depending on what's going on with the case. But for the most part, I have been able to have good success. And most of my referral is word of mouth. The clients and the veterinarians refer to me because I've built up a reputation for myself in the region.
Yeah, that's great. And so when you say you're on your own completely, do you have like administrative staff, or are you doing absolutely everything?
I really am doing everything.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm a one-woman show. I'm the veterinarian. I am literally everything. I don't have a receptionist. I run the office. And in the beginning, I will say it was a little bit of a challenge because I had to learn how to balance between patients and the admin things in between, although I try to give myself admin work or time outside of patients. But really, my priority are those patients. So if I have to choose, I'm going to take a patient in, I'm going to see that patient, and everything else will catch up at one point. But I got better at it, and I flow now. I don't even think about it. It just becomes part of your routine. I'm the mega multitasker you'll ever meet. So, even if it's 10 seconds, it's time. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
So if I have 10 seconds, it's not a break. If I have 10 minutes, it's not a break. I'm trying to catch up with following up with a client, an email, maybe someone scheduled. There's always something going on.
So what do you think you've done, to get used to sort of juggling all those balls? What have you done to make it easier for yourself? Have you sort of blocked certain time, or do you just sort of have a system in place that you know that you're going to get everything done in one day?
It kind of just fell into place. Honestly, I don't block any time. I will run from patient to patient. I've seen as many as 18 patients myself in a day, and I just roll. There are times where I do extend my day. I don't like to make it a habit, but if there is a patient, some of our cases, as you know, are time dependent or more critical. Those guys I will take in because I certainly don't want it to affect their prognosis. But I think with time, I just got used to it. And it's more of a mentality too. The more we think of things, or the more we think of them as being so challenging, they do become challenging. So once I started to realize how much I can do in a day just by focusing and going from one thing to another, it really is doable. I'm exhausted, but I can do it.
And one of the things that I remember, because I obviously also started with not having like anyone, just on your own. Like, and I remember for me, one of the biggest things was remembering what to do. Like, you'd be treating a patient, and then suddenly you're like, oh, I need to phone that vet, or I need to phone that
Yeah.
person. And then it just like get in my mind, and then I would forget. And then the next day I'd be like, oh, I forgot to do that, How do you remember those kind of things? If you got a little notepad and pen that you have next to you, or how do you do that?
Notes all over my desk. I have sticky notes on the computer, by the keyboard, and I'll write myself a note, and I make sure it's somewhere visible, not just off to the side. And as I run through things, it'll remind me to, if I have some appointments to put on the scheduler, or call someone back, or however it is. But I will say, I definitely, in the beginning, I was able to remember much more detail for things. And now I'm finding that somewhere they're getting lost into the abyss somewhere. But, my clients are so good, and they realize that I'm on my own, and they see how much I do. They're so supportive, and they're always looking out for me, which is really the best part of all this. They're such a support group, and they realize how much I have on my plate, and they'll actually help me out in terms of, if I forget, they'll remind me. And I'll sometimes say, if I forget, send me a message. They said, no problem. So I really think that's the best part, is just the clientele being so supportive and understanding of how much it is, because they're just so grateful that there's a service that they can go to, and how well their pet is doing that. They kick in and help me. I don't have assistants. They're the ones holding their pet for me if needed. Honestly, a lot of the times the pet are just so calm with acupuncture and laser and all that they feel so nice and calm. But for the most part, they kick in. They know everything is in my clinic. They'll grab something for me if I need it. They become my assistants, and it's really amazing. That's my favorite part. They become my friends. And even after, if we lose a pet, or, their time has expired, we still stay in touch. And that's really the best part for me.
Yeah. Sounds like you've trained them very well. Yeah, I mean, maybe you've even got to a stage where they can make you a cup of tea.
Yes, I have, exactly. I have a
You
tea
know?
and coffee machine. I have
Yeah,
water, so I mean, they love it because it's a little break from life for them, right? Because I
yeah,
have a very zen environment in my practice. And so for them, it's a little bit of a break from chaos or whatever their lifestyle is, whether they have kids or
yeah,
it's work. A lot of people are working from home now. So it's their little break and they get to drive somewhere for a little bit and they're in a calm space. And then they go
yeah.
back, really, they just hang out. We chat. I get to know them. They know a lot about me. They really enjoy it. It's very, very laid back. There's nothing, obviously they respect me as a professional but it's still very, it's not very rigid. It's very, let's
Yeah.
do what we need to do. And it's just amazing to see them.
And so different from traditional veterinary,
Very,
right?
very,
As a vet myself, it's so, you know, clinical and, everything is time, and rush. And just,
right,
yeah, I must say, I loved the difference between traditional veterinary and vet rehab, exactly the same reasons that you're saying. And I love
right.
those close relationships that I built with my clients and their children, even, their children would come and,
Mhm.
yeah.
And they learn, they ask questions, I explain things, and I have volunteers. I do take volunteers that come in a lot of the time, a lot of high school kids or college, or they're interested in going to the veterinary field. I support them in that and I answer their questions. And it's so different. Rehab has been around for a while, but in our discipline, really, it's still not a very long time. It's still growing. There's exposure. There's still a lot of exposure we need to work on and advocacy and all that. And it's cool for them to see how much there is out there and you don't want it's not just this box, you can go out of that and there's so much you can do for the patients and the how when they see how well the patients are doing and how happy the patients are and the clients, it's really life changing for them. They're all impacted in a different way, and however that's going to impact them for the future will be however it will be. But as long as I know I can make a little dent in whatever they're going to do in the future. Pioneering in this field is very important. And part of it is advocating that there are different modalities. There's other things to do. And you kind of have to be that courageous person to go outside that box and say, this is what I'm doing, and whether you accept it or not. And, the product, it's obvious how well the patients do and how much the clients love it.
I think it's generally, people in our actual profession that are not accepting it, right? I think it's because, our colleagues, depending on when they qualified, they didn't learn anything about it.
Right.
So it took me a very long time to establish myself and get referrals from other vets. That was years ago. So I opened in 2006. So, and in those times, there were a lot of vets that were not open to veterinary rehabilitation, but that's really changed now. I mean, here in South Africa, it's really become mainstream, and there are a lot of practices that have veterinary physiotherapists working for them, veterinary rehabilitation therapists, hydrotherapists. So yeah, I think we've come a long way, but I think there's still lots of areas all over the world where, we still have to raise that awareness about veterinary rehabilitation and, keep lecturing and keep advocating for what we do.
Agreed, for sure. My referrals have definitely increased as they realize, especially because the clients are the ones that go back and tell them how great and how
Yeah.
effective it is. I was lucky in that when I established my practice, I already had an established reputation here in Jacksonville. So I had already worked with specialists that knew me and how I worked, and they trusted me. So for example, a neurologist here in the region. So as soon as I opened, I already had referrals because they were waiting for me to open. And then it just built up from there. They still refer, a lot of more general practitioners are referring because they're learning more about me. And once they see how well the patients do, and again, how happy the clients are, we all need to work together. It's fact. I do what I do, you do what you do. We all work together. I love collaborating with other veterinarians. I'm not a competitive person. I want to work alongside other people. We all have our strengths, and we should use that to the benefit of the patient. And especially now where medicine's going, people are specializing much more in different areas, and it should be that way. Where if someone has a passion for something specific, I'd have no problem referring back to that person for whatever it is, or sending back to the general practitioner. it's really a teamwork thing because it's difficult to handle it all, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we all for working together in our multidisciplinary team.
Mhm.
So you mentioned that a lot of your clients you got from word of mouth, and you also said now you're getting some vet referrals. Do you have any time to do any marketing, or right now are you just sort of relying on that word of mouth and the referrals?
Right. So that's primarily my marketing, honestly. I don't have time for it, but even if I did, I don't need it. I pay for a Google ad and that's about it. Everything else, it's really self-marketing for me. Social media I use, I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and I have a lot of followers. The clients love following. I have non-clients that are following because they just love seeing the videos of the pets doing better. What happens is I try my best to post a baseline video or however what they look like. And then as we progress, people are following their progression, how well they're doing. I mean, you can't deny it's a very visual profession, right? It's a very visual, you can see the difference. They love the hydrotherapy tank and they love seeing the pets in there. And so I do that myself too. I do my social media posting as well. And I think people like that because they like that it's coming from me. It's very personal coming from me. They know that I'm treating the pets myself and they get my perspective and it's just uplifting for them. So people really look forward to those posts. So aside from that and word of mouth, really, I mean, people on my form, on the initial intake form, I ask, what was your referral or how did you find me? And a lot
Yeah.
of it is friend of a friend. I know so many groups of friends because they all come together, right? But then the second most popular is Google. These people are looking for
Yeah.
this service. They really are. And if they're not
Yeah.
aware of it or if they're not referred, they will find it because they're so committed and determined. So a lot of it is Google. They're Googling acupuncture, they're Googling rehab, they're looking for an option for their pet. And when they find me, they're so relieved. And even then, there's not many of us here, or at least here where I am. And they're so
Yeah.
relieved that they at least have an option for it because we know, and one of my biggest goals of doing what I do is to make sure that that client, pet parent, knows that they've done everything they could for their pet, especially in the senior and geriatric stage, because we know however time that's going to be, but it helps through the grieving process. You know, the grief is still going to be there, but if they know they've pursued rehab, and I tell them, when you come to see me, you are doing absolutely everything you can for this pet because you're going to be up above and beyond. And I will tell
Sure.
you everything that you need to do. And if we run out of options, then we have definitely run out of options because I'm going to be that person that gives you the additional options. And fortunately, those options can run us for another year or two or more. We're very successful, but there comes a time where we need to measure quality of life. And I want to know that those clients are very comfortable with what they've done.
Yeah, I mean, I must say we are often sort of their last hope. And it is great when we get those cases where we
Right.
know we can really help them. I mean,
Yes.
there's lots we can do. That's the crazy thing, is that we're their last hope. And then
It's not
there's
just one
so,
thing. It's really a cocktail of
yeah,
just this recipe of, you know, when you sit there in a consult and I can offer you at least 5 or 6 different things off the bat where we can try, people are just
yeah,
enlightened and they feel good. Whether those things will help or not, you can't guarantee, of course, but at least we have other things to explore. And again, most importantly, if we're not successful for some reason, they know that they've done
yeah,
everything. I'm very transparent with my clients. I communicate a lot with them, and I really feel like honesty is important. I don't beat around the bush. I'm pretty direct with them in what I feel and what I think. I tell them what comes through my mind, I will tell you. So you're going to know everything that's going through my thought process. And I really do treat them like my own pet. So if I'm saying this is what I recommend we do, it's because I'm thinking of my own pets, especially my
yeah.
senior. I have a senior, she's about 13, and I see the same things in her and her changes. And I put myself in your shoes and I'll say, this is what I would do if it was my own pet. I don't have to say that. That's exactly what I'm telling you.
It is. It is. And it's one of those things when you're a vet, when you're studying, you don't really think about, right? You
No.
just think about treating the animals, and then you realize that you actually have to communicate with people. And it's
It's a big
sometimes not so easy.
compliance is important, and unless they fully understand, in simple terms, how important it is for their treatment or what they're doing at home and how to do it correctly, that makes a world of a difference in the case. If we just kind of just hand them a bottle of medication and read the label and they have no idea, the compliance is going to be much more difficult. It could be frustrating for them. It's easy for us because we work with animals for years, but for them, it's not the same. So client education is so important, and setting expectations are huge. In my initial consult, those clients know what to expect. And I lay down all the ground rules at that first initial consult. These are my regulations. This is how I operate. This is what happens here and here in terms of scheduling, cancellations, or however, and they're good to go. They know what's going on and there's no blind spots, I guess.
Yeah, I love it. And if you manage the expectations from the get-go, then they're less likely to be disappointed.
Exactly.
So they know exactly this is how it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned the Google pay-per-click ads. I'm really interested to find out how that does for you.
It does well. The statistics, it sends out an email about once a month that shows the statistics of how many leads and how many views there were to the website. And the numbers just keep going up and up. I mean, there's been a lot of exposure to the website. It even shows you how many people have asked for directions from the website, people actually looking to see the location of the practice. It goes in pretty deep. And I would say it's well worth it. I don't feel like it's very expensive, but it was the one thing I set up when I started the practice because, again, I wanted to stay simple. So I thought, well, I'll at least do this because Google is huge, right? That's what people do all day. They look for things. And the ad actually, what it does is it brings forth the practice more. For example, someone's looking up keywords, it's going to bring up the practice first over others. Although, again, there's not many in the area, but still it prioritizes that SEO, the search engine. So, and it's worked very well. So I keep it, even though, again, I get a lot of people coming in. I mean, why not? Most of my referrals are Google. So I keep the ad up and the statistics are great. So, and it's simple, so it's working. So me, I don't fix what's not broken. So for now, I mean, clients are still coming in. I'm getting a lot of new patients. So I'm not going to add something else on yet until I feel like, I'm in expansion mode or something like that.
And I think it works really well for you being on your own because you don't have that time to market. So you're prepared to then take some money and put that into your marketing to free up your time. So I think that's really clever, a clever way to do it. If you've got more time and you've got more people, then you can invest their time into doing more marketing that's free, right? But when you don't have time, a little bit of a budget to do that, then it's sorted, and at least there's something coming in. There's website visitors coming in through Google, and those people that are Googling are really, really hot leads because they are Googling the specific keywords. They're actually looking for you. It's not like they've just stumbled upon you. They've actually Googled you and you've come up, whatever you do. So that's a great strategy.
It is important when you set up the keywords, when you set up the business profile on Google or SEO and all the keywords, it's important because that's what's going to match what they're looking for. I find that most people, they may not know the word rehabilitation. They're not aware of that term. I mean, they know physical therapy, but they don't know rehab in our world. So there's not many looking specifically for that word, but acupuncture for sure. Most people are looking for acupuncture. And obviously I offer it, so it's on there. And then once they see the site, they see everything else that's offered. Laser is probably the second most common, and hydrotherapy is big too. They'll look for hydrotherapy because they know it exists. They just know how to find it. So they'll look those words up. And then once they get into the website, you're golden. Then they have all the information. They see what I offer, the videos. I have before and after videos on the website. And they go ahead and schedule their initial consult that I have set up online on the website. The initial consult they set up on their own. And then once they're established, I'm the one that goes ahead and sets up the therapy and all the other additional appointments for them.
Yeah, I saw that. And that's also really clever because, working by yourself, you need to automate as much as you can. Yeah. So do you direct, like anyone that phones, do you just direct them straight to your website to book that first consult every time?
Yeah, I do. So I get a lot of voicemails and or text messages that come through the clinic or emails. And I will say the best next step is to go ahead and schedule your initial consults. And for the most part, they're great. A lot of people want a lot of their questions answered, on the phone or however, but I really try my best to guide them towards the initial consult because that's really what the consult is all about, right? That's where I get to answer all your questions. That's where I set expectations. That's where I'm telling you what I can do for you and your pet. And then it's your decision on whether you want to continue or not. It's not you're not signing up from just the initial consult, but it's important that people commit to that initial consult. And if they don't, then they're really not committed to going for the service. It's a sign for me where I know, well, if you're not going for the initial consult, because my best, I'm on stage in initial consult. That's when plus we know as veterinarians that we need a history. We need to be able to see the patient. We need to establish a relationship. And it's very difficult for me over the phone to know what to recommend, or it really just depends on how the patient is doing. What's the record? What do the x-rays look like? I have none of that, so it's important for the clients to understand that we need that information to best guide you. Otherwise, it's just kind of a loose guideline, and I don't like doing that. So I take quality of medicine very seriously. So I direct them to the website, and I would say 95% of them go ahead. I'll see the initial consult come up within the next 1 or 2 days. If they don't show up again, then it's just not meant to be. It's fine.
So how do you manage that initial consult and then your other consults? So as soon as you start booking other consults, which are your follow-ups, then you got to block those ones that are on your website.
That's the trickier part. I'm better at it because it's, even though it's automated, I need to go in to show my availability. So I try it at least once a week or a couple of weeks to go into the scheduler and go ahead and update whether that initial consult is still available or not. Because when I put in the availability, it's open, but then as I go ahead and schedule therapy, it's not. So I go in and update every so often. And honestly, it works pretty well. I mean, there have been a few times where I missed one or someone, I'm double booked, but I just reach out to them and say, listen, are you able to come in at this time? And I've never had any pushback. I figure it out. If it's something on me, I will figure it out. I worked through my lunch many times. If I have to extend my day to accommodate, I will, because that was my own, I'm not going to not see the patient. So I work it out, and people are very grateful. It's no big deal.
It's one of the benefits of just being on your own, because there's no confusion with anyone,
Exactly.
So like I remember when I made that shift from getting somebody else, then there's another person to manage, and that there could potentially be a confusion or broken down telephone. When you tell them something, then they get it wrong. And so when you're by yourself, you can control everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then as you make that move to get more people, then it's harder to control. When you're on your own, it's easy to say like, okay, well, I can just do lunch, or I'm okay to stay later tonight. So
right.
I'll just,
I can make those decisions correctly, and
exactly. Yeah.
People say all the time, you need help. And, you don't understand. Yes, it's a lot for me, but I can see more patients. I can accommodate more people much easier if it's just me. Once you start adding team members, it changes everything. And that's what they're not looking at that. They don't understand that, and I know it will once I do. It's just, I have to be ready to do that, because it's much more for me to manage. And I'm so focused on patients. I don't want anything to take me away from the patients, so that's the dilemma there.
So if I can give you some advice, because obviously I went through this transition, is that to set up the systems now. So like if you have a system for doing something, you need to document it, because I never had that. So then when I got the assistants, I actually just was pulling my hair out, just thinking this is actually more work now, because I'm having to redo everything that the assistant's not getting right. But it was completely my fault, because I didn't have a system to teach them. I was just expected them just to wing it like I was, and when I was winging it, it was fun, because I'm not going to get cross with myself. I might be like, oh, I made a mess up there, but then I sorted it out. But then when somebody else wings it, they wing it completely different to you, and then you're not happy because they're not doing it like you do it. So you need to get a system in place. So everything that you eventually want to delegate needs to be documented. So if you have that in a documentation, number one, when you make an appointment, you do this, and this. Then when that person comes, they just follow it, and then they're not bothering you all the time. Say, how do I do this again? How do I do this again? So
yes, that makes sense for sure.
So let's go and have a look now at your consult. So you consult throughout the day. So what are your hours, and how many days a week are you working?
I'm there Tuesday through Saturday. On the weekday, Tuesday through Friday, 9 to 6, and then Saturdays 9 to 3. Those are my set hours at least.
So those are long hours.
Those are long hours. And that's not when I'm extending my day. There are days where I do, because I'm getting those critical patients in, and of course, we want to help everyone, and it's okay for a while as I'm going through a wave, but then I cut back and start saying, okay, I'm not doing that for anymore. And
Yeah.
that's I just went through a wave of that the last couple of months. Now it's starting to ease out a little bit more, where I'm able to at least, even if it's a half hour break in the middle of the day, we call it lunch break. It's not really lunch. It's not so much so I can just sit there and eat. It's really just so I can catch up on things that are going on in between appointments,
Yeah.
the admin stuff, messages, emails, whatever it is that I need to do. So, and just a break just for myself, just quiet time away from people, because when you literally go from one person to another, you just don't have a minute to yourself. So I really try to prioritize that for myself. It doesn't happen all the time, but it's definitely always there in the back of my mind. And people are aware of that as well. I mean, there are some clients where they're like, I don't want you to book me during your break, so because they know that. And I tell them all the time, if I don't function, your pet doesn't function. So, and I'm a mobility specialist. That's all I see is mobility. So if I'm not mobilizing, if I'm not moving or functioning, I can't, there's only so much we can do, and I fatigue. And then, I mean, I'm still treating your pet, but I certainly want to do the best I can for your pet. So they understand that too. So it's just a balance. That's all it is.
Are you doing all the hydrotherapy there on your own? So the client will come in, do you do acupuncture first and some treatments and then put them into the underwater treadmill?
It really depends on the patient. Honestly, I'll go back and forth. Some I do before and then I do hydro. Some I do hydro first and then I'll do acupuncture and or laser, however. So, and it's hard to explain. It's intuitive. It just depends on the patient themselves too. Some of them I want to do hydro first to tire them out a little bit. Some of them I prefer to do the acupuncture first. And there's really no concrete or medical reason. It's just what works for the flow of that patient or maybe the client, however, or it's what they use. But sometimes I'll swap it. I'll say, you know what, I want to do this first and see if it works differently. And a lot of times it benefits them if I do acupuncture first, but the pet they get so relaxed during that time that's more difficult to get them up and going for hydro. So a lot of times it's nice to just get hydro done and then they're nice and relaxed on, I treat on the bed, on the floor, and they're nice and relaxed, but they're also wet from hydro, so those are all factors that if it's an easily dryable patient, I'll often do them first, but their coat is if they have this large coat and they absorb the water, a lot of times I tend to do the acupuncture first and laser, because that way they're just wet and they leave and they're not wetting the blankets and they're not all over the place. So, and those are all factors I look at.
Shaking wet dog all over the room. And
I know. Water everywhere. I'm wet. You know how it is. I'm wet. My pants are wet. I go into the tank with some of the patients too, depending if they need it. So by the end of the day, I'm all furred up and, but that's just what
smelling like a wet dog. Yeah. So with all of that and that you're doing, do you have any time for any hobbies?
Yes, for sure. And that's where I'm very strict with that as well. Because, I say my motto is work hard, play hard. When I'm in the clinic, I'm so focused on patients and I work, but I have a very active social life outside the clinic. I'm involved in many different things outside the clinic as well. So I'm a traveler. I love traveling. So I do take my time off and I do tell the clients that as well. And not one person has ever had an issue with me. I mean, I will take 2 weeks off and take a trip. And because it's just me, the clinic closes. But, I make sure before I go, everyone is in a good spot. And so far, I mean, I've done it several times now and everything's gone well. And in fact, they encourage me to go. They say, you need this trip, go. And I share pictures with them and they love hearing my stories. So it becomes part of the clinic anyway. So I'm strict in taking that time off. I will take long weekends sometimes too. I have meetings to attend. I'm also a life coach as well. I do that as well. I do a lot of women empowerment, but I'm also starting to coach, in fact, professionals more now, like veterinarians. Why? Because our profession is very difficult. Compassion fatigue. We've seen the suicide rate increase a lot in the last 5 years. And it has to stop. Veterinarians are so awesome, but yet there's so many that are still unhappy in whatever they're doing, whether it's general practice or however. And I think it just hurts to see it. And I feel like not just veterinarians, I can relate to veterinarians because I've been one, but in any profession, I really feel like people need to find what makes them happy, because going through life just doing things because you feel like you have to it's not productive, it's unhealthy. And I feel like that's what happens a lot in our society. So, especially in veterinarians, from what I see, because I'm exposed to them so much. So, that's another thing I do as well. I'm an author. I wrote a book as well a couple of years ago. So, I definitely keep myself busy. So, I'm very much into wellness and harmony and balance. So, I try to do my yoga. I go to the gym 2 to 3 times a week. It's balancing all that out, or even just going for walks. But I love nature. I'm an outdoor person. So, those are all things that make me happy outside of my patient happiness, which, is different. There's your patient happiness because you love seeing them, but then there's, I need to separate from the clinic also. And
Yeah.
people understand that as well. I love what I do, but I need to be able to walk away from the practice and separate. I don't check my message or emails when I'm not in the clinic. I set that boundary. So I'm a boundary setter as well. I make that clear in the initial consult to clients. They can text to an app on my phone, but I'm not checking it until I come in. There should not be an emergency that you're contacting me for. If there's an emergency, you go to the emergency veterinarian. If there's something you need to tell me, you can go ahead and message me, but just know I won't get it for, if I'm off, I won't get it for a couple of days, or if I'm out on vacation, I will not get it for a couple of weeks or whatever it is. So, because if I'm reading a text or if I'm reading an email, I'm not separating, right? Because our mentality,
Yeah.
working with the patient. And so that means it's an evil cycle. There's no breaking of that cycle because our brains are constantly in patient mode. And again, we love our patients, but we need to be able to separate and focus on other things. It's healthy. And again, if we can't keep ourselves mentally healthy and physically healthy, then we can't help as many patients as we can. So definitely I separate for sure.
I love that setting of the boundaries. And especially, I think sometimes we want to be there so much for our clients that we can actually do it to our detriment. I'm more interested in your book. So tell me, what is the book that you wrote?
Yeah, so it's called Release Your Inner Beast. I wrote it 2.5 years ago now, and it's about,
Yeah.
so I struggled with endometriosis when I was in my 20s through college,
Yeah.
so before vet school. So I actually had to take off from school for it because I wasn't able to function really while I was trying to look for options. And unfortunately, even nowadays, it's still a very unknown disease syndrome that women get. It's still very overlooked. And so a lot of advocacy is required there as well, awareness of the disease, because so many women go through it, and options. I was lucky in that I was told that there was nothing else they could do for me, and I continued to look for options. I found a surgeon in New York. I'm from New Jersey originally, so it was right there across the river. And I had surgery and I was able to go without endo for 13, 14 years. So I was very, very lucky. But it's not just surgery, it's the balance. And this is why I'm so focused on my wellness and balance, because the more stressed I am and the more challenged I am, the more at risk I have of getting endo again, or any other disease, right? Or any other ailments.
Yeah.
I did get endometriosis back last year, and it was kind of a shock for me. In fact, as soon as I opened my practice, within the month, I started getting sick. So I faced that challenge. And I had surgery a few months later, January last year. So I had to close down for a little bit, but I look back and I only took 2 weeks off post-op, and that was difficult for me because again, I had a new practice, and my mind was going, I just opened up this practice. I have these patients, but I had to take care of myself as well. So the book is about, I wrote that book before I got endo again, but it's about my perspective of just health in general and what I feel is important. Taking time off, setting those boundaries. Social circles are huge. And that's what I talk a lot about in my life coaching is who you surround yourself with, toxicity. I know it's difficult, but when we're surrounded by those things, we reflect those as well. It's very unhealthy. So, and again, in our society, or at least here in the United States, a lot, that's the biggest challenge I see people doing is they don't know how to separate themselves from toxic people or just letting them go. It's very difficult because a lot of those people could be a family member. It could be, it's challenging, but the book is about, I go through different categories of what I feel are important, but I also try to educate on, and so I focus on endometriosis, but I kind of broaden it as this is what I feel is important for anyone, not just women in terms of health. So I released that in December a couple of years ago, and life coaching I started last year, and it's because I help people through my patients, which is why I became a veterinarian, but I'm being pulled to help people directly more, not just through the patient. So life coaching is kind of my first step, and we'll see what comes in the future. But people are drawn to me. I'm an empath. I'm a light worker. So people are very drawn to me, and they feel like, and they need help. And I feel like I'm the person that can do that, but I also need to balance my patients. So I'm slowly trying to balance all of that. So I wear many hats, but life coaching is nice because it's guiding. And again, if I can relate to someone even more so, because I know how it feels to have gone through something, especially veterinarians, but I'll coach pretty much anyone. But I am known for women empowerment because of what I've gone through with endo and all these other issues. So, women need more confidence and they need more courage. And unfortunately, the insecurities that exist are unbelievable. We all have insecurities, no matter how confident we are, but it's just a matter of working through those things and putting yourself first. That's the main thing in the book for sure. It's not selfish. It's not a selfish putting yourself first. It's putting yourself first so that you can best help others and be there for others. Otherwise, we can't be present if we can't be present with ourselves, right?
Wow, Carla, well, you definitely been inspiring me. So, I mean, all the things that you're juggling, and I've been talking about my book for like a year and a half now, and I started writing it, but like I just never ever get into it and finish it. So you've inspired me now. I'm gonna start focusing again on my book. Yeah, I'll definitely share it with you once it's published. But thank you. It's been amazing chatting to you. And yeah, I just want to say well done just on everything that you do. You really are amazing. It sounds like you've got all these balls and they're all in the air. You're keeping them up there. So well done.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Truly. It was nice meeting you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome, Carla. Have a great day. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button so you get notified every time I load a new podcast. And please, if you get a moment, head over to Stitcher or iTunes and leave me a review. It's a really lonely job being a podcaster, and so the only time I get to hear from you or know that you're out there is when I get a review. And know that I read every single one of your reviews. So to those of you that have left reviews, I want to say a very, very big thank you. Every time we get a review, it really helps to get the Veterinary Rehabilitation Podcast out there to all the vet rehabbers all over the world. All right, vet rehabbers, so if you are looking for more continuing education in the field of veterinary rehabilitation, head over to onlinepethealth.com. Go be awesome, guys.